It was a busy afternoon at a trendy city restaurant where customers bustled about, enjoying their meals. Sarah, a fiery and outspoken waitress, took pride in her job and had strong opinions about the world around her. She was a staunch believer in standing up for her values, even when it came to her work. So, when Michael, a middle-aged man in a crisp suit and a MAGA hat, walked in and took a seat, her day took an unexpected turn. The red hat instantly caught Sarah's attention, and her stomach turned. To her, it wasn't just a hat. It represented ideals she couldn't condone. Without hesitation, she approached Michael and said, "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't serve you here." Calmly, Michael responded, "Is that so? And why is that?" What followed would not only shake Sarah's world but also reveal an incredible truth about the man she had just turned away. Before we dive into this story of judgment, self-reflection, and redemption, we want to hear from you. Have you ever judged someone before truly knowing them? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories that inspire and surprise. Michael entered the restaurant during the lunch rush, wearing a sleek suit and his MAGA hat. A stark, unmistakable symbol that drew glances from several tables. He moved with calm confidence, surveying the bustling space before settling at a booth near the window. For Michael, the hat was more than just a piece of clothing. It represented his beliefs, his values, and his identity. He wore it often, unbothered by how it might be perceived by others. Sarah, the waitress covering his section, noticed him almost immediately. She froze, her cheerful demeanor replaced by unease. To her, the MAGA hat symbolized ideologies she passionately disagreed with. A deep sigh escaped her lips as she grabbed her notepad and approached his table, her steps hesitant but deliberate. "Good afternoon, sir. Can I help you find a seat elsewhere?" she asked, her tone curt. Michael looked up, his calm gaze meeting hers. "Actually, I'm comfortable right here. I'd like a menu, please." Sarah's lips tightened. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't serve you. You'll need to leave." Michael raised an eyebrow, his voice steady and polite. "May I ask why?" Sarah hesitated but stood firm. "Your hat, it represents values that don't align with what I believe in. I won't serve someone wearing that." Michael leaned back in his seat, his expression unreadable. "Interesting. So because of my hat, you've decided I don't deserve service here?" Her frustration boiled over. "I have a right to refuse service if I feel uncomfortable." At that moment, Rachel, the restaurant manager, noticed the escalating tension and approached the table. "Is everything okay here?" she asked, her eyes darting between Sarah and Michael. Sarah spoke quickly, trying to explain. "I've told this gentleman that I can't serve him. I don't feel comfortable." Rachel's brow furrowed, clearly surprised. "And why is that, Sarah?" "It's the hat," Sarah said flatly, crossing her arms. Rachel turned to Michael, offering a professional smile. "I apologize, sir. Let me take your order personally." Michael smiled graciously. "Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll take the house special and a black coffee." As Rachel walked away to place the order, Sarah glared after her, feeling betrayed. She muttered under her breath but returned to her other tables, her frustration simmering. Meanwhile, Michael sat quietly, observing everything but saying nothing. When Rachel returned with Michael's order, she addressed him respectfully. "If there's anything else you need, sir, please don't hesitate to let me know." Michael nodded. "Thank you. It's rare to see someone handle a situation like this with professionalism." Rachel hesitated, confused by the remark, but smiled. "We aim to make every guest feel welcome." Michael left shortly after finishing his meal, leaving a generous tip for Rachel. As he exited the restaurant, Sarah caught sight of him walking away, her annoyance still palpable. What she didn't realize was that Michael wasn't just any customer. The next day would reveal a truth that would shake the foundations of her perspective and her career. The morning after his dining experience, Michael sat in his home office, sipping coffee and reflecting on the events of the previous day. Despite the disrespect shown by Sarah, he felt calm, determined not to react out of anger but to address the issue constructively. He pulled out his phone and dialed the restaurant's main line. Rachel, the manager, picked up, her tone professional and polite. "Thank you for calling Brighter Days Bistro. This is Rachel speaking. How can I help you?" "Good morning, Rachel," Michael said in his measured tone. "This is Michael Everett. I dined at your restaurant yesterday, and I'd like to discuss an experience I had." Rachel immediately recognized his voice. "Oh, Mr. Everett, yes, I remember you. I hope everything was satisfactory with your meal." "The food was excellent, thank you," Michael replied. "But I'd like to address the behavior of one of your staff members, Sarah. I believe her name is." Rachel's tone grew more cautious. "I see. Please go on." Michael described the encounter succinctly, ensuring not to exaggerate or vilify Sarah. I understand that people have differing opinions, and I respect that. However, I believe it's inappropriate for a staff member to refuse service based on personal beliefs, especially in a professional setting. Rachel sighed, disappointment evident in her voice. Mr. Everett, I truly apologize for what happened. That's not how we operate, and I'll be addressing this immediately. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. Thank you for your time, Rachel, Michael said. I appreciate your professionalism. Before ending the call, Michael added, one more thing. You should know I'm not just a customer. I'm the owner of Brighter Days Bistro. Rachel's breath caught audibly. You're the owner? Yes, Michael confirmed. I've been watching how the restaurant operates, and your actions yesterday were commendable. I'd like to meet with you and Sarah later today to address this situation. Rachel quickly agreed, a mixture of nerves and determination overtaking her. Of course, Mr. Everett, I'll arrange for Sarah to come in. Later that afternoon, Rachel called Sarah into her office. Sarah entered, already suspecting the subject of the meeting. Her defensiveness was evident in her posture and tone. Is this about yesterday? She asked curtly. Yes, it is, Rachel said firmly. I've spoken with Mr. Everett, the gentleman you refused to serve. Sarah crossed her arms. Look, Rachel, I stand by what I did. That hat stands for things I don't agree with, and I have a right to refuse service if I feel uncomfortable. Rachel leaned forward, her voice calm but authoritative. You may have personal beliefs, Sarah, but when you're on the clock, your job is to provide excellent service to every customer, regardless of their appearance or opinions. What you did goes against the values of this restaurant. Sarah opened her mouth to argue, but Rachel held up a hand. There's more you need to know. Mr. Everett isn't just a customer, he's the owner of this restaurant. Sarah's expression shifted from defiance to shock. Wait, what? That's right, Rachel said. He didn't reveal his identity yesterday, but he called me this morning to share his experience. He's requested to meet with both of us. Sarah's face paled as she processed the revelation. He's the owner? And he wants to meet with me? Yes, Rachel confirmed. He'll be here shortly. I suggest you prepare yourself for the discussion. When Michael arrived, the atmosphere in the restaurant office was tense. Rachel greeted him warmly and led him to her office where Sarah was waiting. She stood stiffly, her discomfort evident. Michael entered with a composed demeanor, his calm gaze settling on Sarah. Good afternoon, he said, his tone neutral. Good afternoon, Mr. Everett, Rachel replied. Sarah muttered a quiet greeting, avoiding eye contact. Michael sat down, folding his hands on the table. Sarah, I wanted to meet with you directly to discuss yesterday's incident. I'd like to understand your perspective. Sarah hesitated before speaking. I felt uncomfortable serving you because of the hat you were wearing. It represents values I disagree with, and I felt I had the right to refuse service. Michael nodded, his expression thoughtful. I see, and do you think it's fair to judge someone solely based on an article of clothing? Sarah fidgeted, struggling to respond. It's not just the clothing, it's what it stands for. And do you know me personally? Do you know what I, as an individual, stand for? Michael asked, his voice firm but not unkind. Sarah looked down. No, I don't. Michael continued. Sarah, I respect your right to hold personal beliefs, but in a professional setting, we must treat everyone with respect, regardless of our differences. Your actions yesterday didn't just affect me. They could have harmed the reputation of this restaurant. Sarah's voice was barely audible. I understand. Michael took a deep breath. I've decided not to terminate your employment. However, I believe some time away will help you reflect on the importance of professionalism and respect. Effective immediately, you're being laid off for 2 weeks. Sarah's eyes widened and her voice cracked. Laid off? Yes, Michael said. This is not a punishment, but an opportunity for you to consider how your actions impact others and the workplace. Rachel nodded in agreement. Sarah, I hope you use this time to reflect. We value you as an employee, but this situation needs to be addressed. Sarah's face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and relief. I understand. Thank you for giving me another chance. Michael stood, offering a faint smile. Everyone deserves a second chance. I hope you'll make the most of it. As Michael left the office, Sarah sat quietly, her emotions a whirlwind of regret and determination. She knew she had to use the next 2 weeks to grow and prove she was worthy of the opportunity Michael had given her. The first few days of Sarah's layoff were a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, shame, and confusion wrestled within her as she replayed the encounter with Michael over and over in her mind. Sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of tea, Sarah realized she had let her personal feelings dictate her actions in a professional setting. Something she had sworn never to do when she started working at Brighter Days Bistro. Why did I let myself get so worked up over a hat? She muttered aloud, frustration tinging her voice. Her thoughts drifted to the moment Michael had spoken to her directly, calmly yet firmly pointing out the flaws in her behavior. His words stung not because they were cruel, but because they were true. She had acted on assumptions rather than seeking understanding, and it had cost her not only 2 weeks of work but also a piece of her self-respect. Seeking clarity, Sarah reached out to a few close friends and family members to talk about the situation. The reactions were mixed. Her best friend, Mia, a staunch liberal like Sarah, was supportive of her initial stance. "I get it," Mia said during a phone call. "It's hard to serve someone when you feel like what they stand for goes against your values. I probably would have done the same thing." But her older brother, Ben, a more pragmatic thinker, offered a different perspective. "Look, Sarah, I get where you're coming from, but at the end of the day, you're a waitress. Not a protester," he said. "Your job is to serve people, not judge them. And honestly, isn't refusing someone's service just perpetuating the same kind of intolerance you're trying to fight against?" Sarah bristled at his words but couldn't shake the truth behind them. She also confided in her mother, a retired school teacher known for her wisdom and patience. Her mother's response struck a chord. "Sweetheart," her mother said gently, "you're entitled to your beliefs, but how you act on them matters. People rarely learn or change through confrontation. Sometimes the best way to make a difference is to lead by example, with kindness and respect." As Sarah continued to process her emotions, curiosity led her to Google Michael Everett. She wasn't sure what she expected to find, but the results left her stunned. Article after article painted a picture of a man who had worked tirelessly to build Brighter Days Bistro from a single-family-run eatery to a thriving chain of restaurants. He was known for his hands-on leadership style and his commitment to giving back to the community. One feature story highlighted his efforts to provide jobs for struggling single parents and his mentorship of young people entering the workforce. "I had no idea," Sarah murmured as she scrolled through the glowing testimonials from former employees. The more she read, the more she realized that Michael wasn't just another wealthy businessman flaunting his political beliefs. He was a person who cared deeply about others, regardless of their backgrounds. It dawned on her how unfair her snap judgment had been. She had seen the MAGA hat and made assumptions about who Michael was and what he stood for without bothering to learn the truth. Her actions were not just unprofessional, they were deeply unkind. Sarah spent sleepless nights grappling with the weight of her realization. She couldn't deny her strong political beliefs or the frustration she felt about the current state of the world. But she also couldn't ignore the fact that she had let those feelings lead her to treat someone unfairly. One night, in a moment of vulnerability, Sarah sat down with a pen and paper and began to write an apology letter to Michael. "Dear Mr. Everett, I want to sincerely apologize for the way I treated you during your visit to Brighter Days Bistro. My actions were unprofessional and unfair, and I deeply regret letting my personal feelings interfere with my duties as a server. I have since learned more about you and the work you've done, and I am humbled by your kindness and generosity. You deserved better from me, and I am truly sorry for my behavior. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to reflect and grow. I hope one day I can earn back your respect. Sincerely, Sarah." She stared at the letter for a long time, unsure if she had the courage to deliver it. Did she even deserve forgiveness after the way she had acted? Meanwhile, Michael discussed the situation with his close friend James over a round of golf. "Why didn't you just fire her?" James asked, genuinely puzzled. "Most people wouldn't have thought twice." Michael smiled faintly, lining up his shot. "Because people deserve second chances," he replied. "We don't grow by cutting people off. We grow by helping them see a better way." James raised an eyebrow. "Still, it must have taken some restraint not to lose your cool." "It wasn't easy," Michael admitted. "But I've been in her shoes. Quick to judge, blinded by my own perspective. Someone gave me grace when I didn't deserve it, and it changed my life. I just hope Sarah takes this time to learn and come back stronger." By the end of her layoff period, Sarah was a different person. The time away from work had forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about herself and the importance of empathy, even in the face of disagreement. She still held her beliefs strongly, but now understood the value of separating her personal convictions from her professional responsibilities. With her apology letter tucked into her bag, Sarah prepared to return to Brighter Days Bistro, hopeful yet apprehensive about the conversation that awaited her. The 2 weeks away from Brighter Days Bistro had felt like an eternity for Sarah. She spent the time reflecting on her behavior, learning more about Michael, and preparing herself to face her colleagues and him directly. The layoff had been a humbling experience, and now, standing in her uniform once again, she was nervous but determined to make things right. As Sarah stepped into the bustling restaurant, she noticed the familiar clatter of dishes and the warm hum of conversation. She had missed this, the rhythm of the bistro, the camaraderie among the staff, and even the challenging customers. But today, things felt different. She wasn't just here to work, she was here to rebuild trust. Rachel, the manager, spotted Sarah and gave her a nod. "Glad to see you back," Rachel said warmly. "Michael's here today. He asked to speak with you when you arrived." Sarah's stomach churned at the mention of Michael. Though she had rehearsed her apology countless times, the prospect of facing him in person was daunting. She squared her shoulders and nodded. "Thanks, Rachel. I'll go see him now." Michael was seated in a corner booth, reviewing a stack of paperwork. When he looked up and saw Sarah approaching, he set the papers aside and stood. His expression was neutral, giving nothing away. Sarah took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she spoke. "Mr. Everett, I want to apologize for how I treated you. I let my personal feelings get in the way of my job. And that wasn't right. I'm deeply sorry." Michael studied her for a moment, his expression softening. "Thank you for saying that, Sarah," he said evenly. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong." Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her, but knew this wasn't the end of the conversation. "I've spent these past 2 weeks thinking about what happened," she continued. "I know now that I didn't just let you down. I let my colleagues and myself down too. I hope I can earn back your trust." Michael gestured for Sarah to sit across from him, and she complied, her nerves still on edge. "I'm not here to punish you, Sarah," Michael began. "I'm here to help you learn." He leaned forward slightly, his tone calm but firm. "In this business, we serve people from all walks of life. You don't have to agree with everyone's beliefs, but you do have to treat them with respect. That's not just a rule, it's a principle. It's what makes this place special." Sarah nodded, absorbing his words. "I understand that now," she said. "I let my assumptions get the better of me, and I regret it." Michael smiled faintly. "Good, because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that we all make mistakes. The important thing is what we do afterward. Are you ready to show me you've learned from this?" "Yes," Sarah said, her voice steady. "I am." Sarah returned to her duties with a renewed sense of purpose. She was determined to prove that she had changed, not just to Michael, but to herself and her coworkers. The initial days were challenging. Some of her colleagues, still stunned by the incident, were hesitant to fully embrace her return. But Sarah didn't let that discourage her. She worked harder than ever, going out of her way to assist others and ensuring every customer received top-notch service. Rachel, who had been skeptical about Sarah's ability to bounce back, began to notice a shift. "You've been on top of everything today," she said one afternoon. "It's good to see you stepping up." Sarah smiled, grateful for the acknowledgement. "Thanks, Rachel. I'm trying to make things right." Over time, Sarah's perspective on Michael began to evolve. Initially, she had seen him as nothing more than a symbol of a belief system she opposed. But as she observed his interactions with the staff and customers, she began to see the man behind the hat, a thoughtful leader who genuinely cared about the people in his restaurant. One evening, as the staff was wrapping up for the day, Sarah approached Michael. "I just wanted to thank you for giving me a second chance," she said sincerely. "It means a lot." Michael nodded, a hint of a smile on his face. "Second chances are how we grow," he said. "You've made mistakes, Sarah. We all have. But what matters is that you're willing to do better." As Sarah walked away, she felt a sense of closure she hadn't expected. She had been given an opportunity to learn and grow, and she was determined not to waste it. Sarah's layoff had been a turning point, forcing her to confront her biases and recognize the value of empathy and respect. Through her journey of reflection and reconciliation, she not only became a better employee, but also a more compassionate person. And while the road hadn't been easy, it had ultimately led her to a place of growth and understanding, both of herself and others. Michael stood at the entrance of Brighter Days Bistro, watching the bustling scene inside. The restaurant, once just one of many he owned, now felt like a symbol of something greater. Reflecting on the incident with Sarah, he saw it as more than a moment of conflict. It was an opportunity to foster growth and understanding within his staff. Turning to Rachel, he said with conviction, "We're not just running a business, we're teaching people how to treat each other." Inside, Sarah moved with confidence and ease, her growth evident in every interaction. Months of hard work had turned her into a standout employee. She had taken the lessons from her layoff to heart, becoming an advocate for kindness and respect among the team. When a nervous new hire hesitated with a difficult customer, Sarah stepped in with a reassuring smile. "I learned the hard way that judging people too quickly doesn't help anyone," she said. "Treat everyone with respect, and you'll go far." As Michael exited, he glanced back at the restaurant, humming with camaraderie. He smiled, proud of the transformation and the proof that even the toughest situations could lead to understanding and growth. Before you go, have you ever had a moment where you realized you were wrong about someone? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed the story of growth and second chances, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more inspiring tales.